Two Canadians have been released from Chinese detention and are heading home after a deal with U.S. authorities to free a top Chinese executive arrested in Canada. Meng Wanzhou, the chief financial officer of China's Huawei telecoms giant, was detained in Canada in 2018 on charges of violating U.S. sanctions on Iran. Weeks later, Beijing detained two Canadian citizens in China in what was seen as an act of retaliation. The case sparked wide-ranging diplomatic and trade tensions.
It's been over 3 years, but now Meng Wanzhou is finally returning home. The Huawei executive struck a deal with US prosecutors to end the bank fraud case against her. A Canadian judge on Friday signed her order of discharge, freeing her from house arrest.
This Sunday will mark the end of a political era in Germany when elections take place for a new leader to replace Angela Merkel as Chancellor after 16 years. A whole generation of young Germans have known no other leader, and one of the big issues of the election campaign has been climate change, with activists holding big rallies in cities across the country.
Relaxing on a Friday evening after 16 years at the helm of the EU's most powerful country, Angela Merkel is relieved perhaps that it's almost all over. The migrant crisis, the euro crisis, 4 US presidents, 5 UK prime ministers, 100 EU summits and more during her time in office. Hers will be a tough act to follow at home and on the world stage.
U.S. President Joe Biden welcomed the leaders of India, Japan, and Australia to the White House in the first in-person summit of the alliance known as Quad.
And I'm honored to welcome Prime Minister Morrison, Prime Minister Modi, Prime Minister Suga, and to the White House. We're 4 major democracies with a long history of cooperation.
During the 2-hour summit, the 4 leaders discussed a series of issues, including vaccine expansion and climate change. But while China was not mentioned in their public remarks, Beijing was clearly top of mind. U.S. officials have sought to play down the security aspect of the Quad alliance. That's though its members carry out naval exercises together amid concerns over China's growing assertiveness in the Indo-Pacific.
It is a simple tablet made of clay, incised with the script of a long extinct language. But this 3,500-year-old artifact is beyond priceless. It is a fragment of the Epic of Gilgamesh, a work of literature written more than 1,000 years before the poems of Homer. Stolen decades ago from Iraq, the tablet was formally returned on Thursday. Following the first U.S.-led war against Iraq in 1991, Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein temporarily lost his iron grip. Museums were looted and priceless objects stolen. In 2014, the tablet was bought for $1.6 million by the wealthy fundamentalist Christian who was building a museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. The fragment was seized by U.S. government authorities in 2019.
Well, anti-lockdown protesters today chose St Kilda's Luna Park as their meeting point, only to be outnumbered by hundreds of police. Officers also swooped along the foreshore, making dozens of arrests.
Up in arms and under arrest.
You're doing the wrong job, Vic Paul. You.
One by one, protesters were pulled away by police at the St Kilda skate park.
What am I under arrest for? I'm a grandmother. It's over there.
The so-called Millions March for Freedom.
Together, united, we'll never be defeated.
Lacking the millions and overtaken by the might of Victoria Police. The group had planned to gather at Luna Park around midday to spread their anti-lockdown and anti-vax message. Deterred by the heavy police presence, the dozens eventually met along the foreshore, briefly taking over Marine Parade. Tensions escalating as police surrounded them from the water and the air as the riot squad was called in.
On some British farms, milk is going to waste. A shortage of lorry drivers has meant gallons of dairy has had to be pulled away.
Phone call out the blue saying they couldn't pick it up, which was a bit of a surprise.
Henry Bloxham, a Staffordshire farmer, constantly concerned, now dealing with the direct consequences of the UK's departure from the EU.
If we were going to not have our milk picked up, it was going down the drain and never seen again.
The National Farmers Union has said the situation is very concerning and not sustainable. The government said most of the solutions are likely to be driven by industry, with progress already being made in testing and hiring.
There are publicity stunts, and then there's this. Free climbing a 520-foot-tall skyscraper to raise awareness for climate change. Alain Robers is known as the French Spiderman. For years, the human spider has been scaling buildings, cliff faces, whatever with his bare hands. This week, his hands took him to the top of Alto Tower near Paris. His message in doing so? He told reporters, "I would like for governments of the whole world to hear this message and invest more effort to fight climate change." It took Alain 50 minutes to reach his climbing goal. It's going to take a little longer for his environmental goal to be reached.